everybody. Welcome to Dat Fury Radio. I'm Howie Howard from Mr. Furious Records. Dat Fury Radio is a... Oh, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I guess I should have asked
when
you.
It's loose.
I should have asked you if you're going to introduce
loose.
me. Yeah, I didn't know if you're going to introduce me.
I am going to introduce you, but okay. You just jump in.
No, go ahead. It's easier when you talk.
No, I'm going to leave all this in. This is going to be great. I like it loose.
Fantastic.
Dat Fury Radio is a collaboration between Mr. Furious Records and Datura Records, both out of Lawrence, Kansas. My guest today is Michael Carlson, an experimental computer musician, prodigious user of the Renoise tracker software. His music defies categorization, but he's done soundtracks, he's done deep drone, he's done dark ambient. Noise and experimentation are around the edges, if not the center of his music. So welcome, Michael. How you doing?
Well, thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm good. I like that we're just immediately off script. This is great.
To be fair, there's only been like the one intro episode that I've been able to listen to. So as far as this particular series goes, I mean, I've listened to the long play listening party before, so.
Then you know where we're coming from, basically. Yeah. This is definitely an evolution of the long play listening party and the work I did with Nate and Royce, who I'm anxious to have back on. I'm texting with both of them, and they'll be on soon for you long play heads that are looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to it just as much as you are. I had a great personal conversation with Royce. Just the other day. Royce is nominated for a Midwest Emmy.
Right on. Congrats, Royce.
For a really cool project. So I want to have him on to talk about that and some other stuff. So,
sweet.
Yeah, all good on that. So we're having a one question episode today, which is our format. We start with a question. It's just a jumping off point. We see where it goes. And this is a question that's even more open-ended than usual. Michael and I have emailed occasionally, but haven't really had a conversation in quite a long time. So the question is simply, Michael, what have you been up to musically and technically?
Fantastic. So I've been dabbling with a few different things, many of which are increasingly overdue obligations, as you are intimately aware. Part of that is because I have been taking a journey down various rabbit holes with regards to surround sound formats and trying to expand beyond stereo. This is something I've been kind of inching towards for over a year now, 2 years? No, 4 years, a while.
Time is weird.
Time is super weird, especially after about 2019.
Yeah.
2019 was actually a crazy productive year for me, and in fact, I rang in the new year to 2020, working on a collaborative thing with Drecka, and then things took a turn in 2020, as you may well know, and so lately it's mostly just trying to get back into the groove of things because it all just kind of came to a screeching halt for me for a while. So it's kind of nice to finally be back at a place where I'm actually working on music stuff on the regular and digging into the fun tech nerdy stuff that engineering types like me really get into.
Yeah. So say more about the surround and what software or gear are you using? Are you in an experimental stage, or are you working on something that people will be able to hear? Or where are you at in that experiment?
Great question. In fact, oftentimes when I get to chatting with people, like through direct messages or whatever, I'll invariably ask them, hey, do you have access to a surround sound system? Because I'd like to share something with you if you do. Pro tip, if you've got one, let me know and I'll hook you up. So I started off doing just quadraphonic because just adding a second pair of monitors, it's not cheap, but it's a nice easy step forward from the basic stereo. Already had like the two, the left and right plus a sub, so that's your 2.1 system. Added a matching pair, like a couple of years ago, because I knew I was wanting to dig into that. In fact, there was one of my tracks that I originally conceived to be a surround sound, or at least quadraphonic, when I first composed it, and it was super awesome to finally help it reach its true intended glory. And so, taking the step from 4 quadraphonic or 4.1 as I'm currently set up to 5.1 is pretty straightforward, because really it's 5.1 is just adds that center channel, for which I don't do vocals, so I don't need to use it. And
yeah,
so
almost, and more of a soundtrack, like including the dialogue and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So taking my existing quad setup and just making the LFE, the low frequency effects, which is basically the subwoofer, and then exporting that as a 5.1 direct WAV file that certain things can play, then that's super easy. And then, of course, then I started thinking about what would be a good delivery mechanism, because how can I help other people listen to this? And so sadly, the most, well, unless you're like a weird audiophile, likes to listen to interesting things like me, you probably don't have a means to play multi-channel audio, let alone have the software as well as the hardware to listen to it on a regular basis. So so I got to thinking, okay, the next easiest way to distribute something like that is video, because we watch surround sound videos like all the time. You can stream it. It's put your MP4 on a USB stick and carry it over, plug it into your Blu-ray player, whatever. Super easy. So
Sure,
started looking into that, and was actually able to put a couple of things together that to proof of concept. In fact, YouTube will play 5.1 surround if you've got the right setup to stream it to like an AV receiver. So that's pretty sweet.
Nice.
And then in the meantime, the whole Dolby Atmos thing happened, or as others would think, was forced upon us. And so that kind of opened up some interesting doors as well. So the past 6 months or so, I've really been digging into the whole Dolby Atmos thing. And it's really a blessing and a curse in so many ways. And I can go into more of that if you want, or I can stop there and we can dig into something else. Because you also asked about like equipment that I'm using, so I don't know if that's the path you want to go down, or if you want to continue format.
I want to go down both, actually.
Okay.
I mean, I want to say, so Royce has gotten really into Atmos, and he's
right on.
certified or whatever the thing, and they're doing a ton of Atmos work.
I need to chat with Royce
at his studio. Yeah, he's a complete like Atmos head at this point.
Okay, I need to talk to Royce.
And doing lots of good stuff with it. So I do want to hear about Atmos, and I'm also just curious, and I don't. Well, just go ahead. I'll save the other part. So yeah, just say a little bit more about your experience with Atmos.
Okay, so the thing you need to understand about Atmos is it was not originally intended for just music. It was designed to be the soundtrack delivery mechanism for film and video. And so the lore, as I understand it, is some audio engineering person who was into those kinds of things played around with it and said, hey, I want to take this track, which I think was Rocket Man by Elton John. And he said, I want to take this track and see if I can mix it in this cool Dolby Atmos thing. And he did that and just kind of blew people away. And then various people at like Apple and Dolby said, yeah, we can make this happen. And so things have been improving as I've been kind of, been following along. But since it's an application of a technology in a way that it was not originally intended to make it do the thing that music people are doing, it's a hack fest. There's lots of scotch tape and band-aids all over the place. And as a mild-mannered engineering type myself, I can kind of understand how and why it got to where it is, and how and why it's really awkward for non-technical people. And so it's as a nerd, that kind of interests me, and I can kind of understand and appreciate where it's coming from. I personally wouldn't say that it's the superior format by any means. Like I said, I'm mostly looking for what is the most prevalent distribution mechanism that other people could hear my surround sound music in. And so Atmos is kind of like the Blu-ray to versus HD DVD, or the VHS versus Betamax. The various formats have their strengths and their weaknesses. And so I'm not gonna cast a vote one direction or another. I'm just saying, hey, that seems to be the way that the industry is pushing everyone. So
Right. How can you get it to people?
exactly. So yeah, that's been really interesting. And so there have been a number of tools that, so the initial tool set, as I understand it, was pretty clunky and awkward. But there are some newer tools now that help newbies like me kind of get over that hump really quickly. In fact, is it okay to mention brand names, or?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
We're not monetized, so.
Okay, cool. So not sponsored, not promoting. I get no kickbacks, but
Right.
Feeler Audio makes a really cool plugin called Dolby Atmos Composer. And what they do is it comes in two parts. There's the Beam plugin, which you plug into your various tracks. And then there's the actual Dolby Atmos Composer, which receives all the audio from the beams. And then that composer piece allows you to route that audio to either binaural in your headphones or to various speakers. So if you've got a multi-channel audio device, you can do that. Or if you're like a Mac user, you can make a composite device with multiple, sound cards, if that's what you got to do to make that happen. And so that has been really cool, because that has actually allowed me to use Renoise, which is very much wants to be stereo only, allows me to actually put everything out in a multi-channel format, which is super cool.
So you kind of, that actually was exactly the other thing I was going to ask about, is like, how do you get, first of all, it was going to be, are you basically using Renoise still for this? It sounds like yes. And then it was going to be, how do you get from Renoise to multi-channel?
So yeah,
plugins are the answer.
So I have still been using Renoise for directly into quad and 5.1, because like I said, it wants to do everything in stereo, but it's really stereo pairs. And it has the capability that for each output track, you can route it to a specific stereo pair on an audio device. So I use, again, not sponsored, I use the Play Audio 12 by iConnectivity, which I guess they don't actually even make it anymore, but it's the perfect sound device for me, because it's got 10 TRS outputs that I can route to 10 speakers. So that's enough to give me a 5.1.4 someday. But anyways, I can configure my outputs in Renoise to say, okay, this stereo pair is the front left and right. This stereo pair is the center and the LFE channel. And this stereo pair is the rear left and right. And I can do 5.1 all day long natively. And it's cool. And so with Dolby Atmos Composer, I can get to the next step, because the cool thing about Dolby is it's object-based audio rather than channel-based audio,
right?
Which is an interesting technical problem and solution that has some interesting side effects when you really think about it, because you can mix using your Dolby Atmos thing, whether it's the Feeler Audio thing or the actual Dolby Atmos renderer or whatever, and you can have it listen to the sound in binaural stereo, direct stereo, or configure it for 5.1, 5.1.2, 5.1.4, all the way up to 9.1.6. Sorry. And so with all those different formats, it's up to the actual Dolby Atmos renderer to take your input and do the maths to figure out with your speaker configuration where to place the sound. Which the challenge now is, so the good thing is you can make one mix and you can play it on all of the things. But then the downside is, if you want to make sure it sounds right on all of the things, you got to figure out how to monitor it on all of the things one way or another.
Right, and you'll never have access to every single possible system. That's kind of the point, is that
Exactly.
So to try and catch up, if we haven't already lost the non-technical users,
Sorry, I'm a nerd.
to try and no, this is great. I'm gonna do my best to try and
Sure.
catch anybody up who's still with us. So, renoise, which we'll talk more about in a soon future episode, I think. But renoise is music making software that Michael is intimately familiar with, and I'm not surprised to hear that it can support multi-channel. That actually makes a lot of sense for your quad 4.1, 5.1.
It doesn't want to.
I was kind of expecting that.
Yeah, it doesn't. It really doesn't want to. That's, again, using technology in ways it was not intended.
Definitely. And then, so Dolby Atmos is a new-ish system for playing back surround and multi-channel and immersive, I guess is the term, audio. And the thing about channel versus object is really important. So when we talked about 4.1, 4 speakers in a square around you plus a subwoofer is your 0.1. That's channel based. You've got 4 speakers and a subwoofer, and you can pan your sounds, within those parameters. But that is going to be the speaker setup that the listener is in.
You know exactly what sound is coming where, because that's where you put it.
Right. With the object based, that the strength, and Michael has said this, is that it can be you don't know how many speakers the listener is going to have, and the system can actually accommodate that, because it's sort of creating this virtual space that you're imagining the listener in, and the system can. I'm trying to be as simple as I can here, and I'm also not an expert in this, but the system is going to take the speakers it has and play the mix back as best it can, given the speakers in the listener's setup, as many or as few as that might be. And so it's gonna make the best match it can between the idealized environment, the sound, the music, the movie, whatever it was created in, and the actual environment the listener is in. And it's gonna, to the best of its ability, make smart decisions about how to render all that out to create the most consistent possible listening experience, which, as Michael was saying, is not necessarily all that consistent.
Yeah.
Because of the scope of the scope of how diverse the systems can be that it's trying to accommodate.
And it gets worse when you look at the fact that Apple uses their own renderer instead of Dolby's.
Of course they do.
Is yet another rabbit hole. And of course there's the big caveat that it doesn't matter. Well, for people who are very intimidated by the whole object-based and multi-speaker scenario that is very expensive and technically difficult to set up, the big kind of giveaway is, no matter what, most people will listen to it on headphones. And so for the people that proselytize, hey, get started in Dolby Atmos, you don't need the big studio, just mix it in your headphones, because that's how most people are going to hear it anyways, is with the binaural mix. And so that's Ben Jordan has a fantastic YouTube video. I think it's called something like "Stop Gaslighting Your Fans with Dolby Atmos," and I recommend watching it if you are interested in Dolby Atmos. He presents a very, very realistic experience of a person just trying to listen and experience the actual thing the way it was intended. Granted, the video is like a year old, and so technology is hopefully improved since then. It made it a lot easier to access that kind of thing. But it's a very nice, good reality check as far as, okay, well, I'm just trying to find what's a nice multi-channel format that's becoming, widely available that I can exploit to send my stuff to, so that the 3 people who might actually want to listen to the multi-channel version of my music can actually do so. And everyone else, they'll get stereo, binaural, whatever fits their system. That's okay. I'm
sure. And from everything I hear, the binaural fold downs are pretty great. So you get generally a pretty good experience in headphones.
Yeah, I've actually been listening to as many Atmos tracks as I can in my headphones, and the experience you get is very directly related to how much effort the audio engineer put into making that mix happen.
So it can be great.
It can be great, yes. It's not guaranteed to be great, and I think that's why you're going to see a lot of polarized opinions about it, because there are some not so great mixes out there. I listened to an album just yesterday, in fact, that it was, I could tell it was like the bare minimum just so they could slap the brand on it and say, yeah, it's there, but yeah, it wasn't all that immersive. Maybe if I were to try it on actual speakers, it might be a little better, but I could tell it's like, okay, it's yeah. And so, yeah, the binaural experience, it kind of depends greatly on how much attention the person gave to the mix, as well as how well that instrumentation and sound works in a binaural space. Because a lot of how binaural works is it sounds like it's in a room verb. And so a lot of the stuff that I like to do has field recordings, which is supposed to be like spaces that are open, and I'm concerned that when I try and do that like in the binaural mix, it's going to be like, okay, I've taken this field with birds and crickets and it's somehow contained in a room to make the echoes work. It's like, I'm not so sure about that. But the cool thing is,
be weird.
Yeah, that can be weird. But the cool thing is I'm doing ambisonic field recordings, and those I can export to the full 9.1.6, feed that into the Dolby mix if I want, so that those three people that happen to listen to it on a full system can experience the way it's supposed to be. But again,
so that should work since you're recording it.
Yes.
Yeah. And just so one more catch up for non-technical listeners.
Sorry.
Binaural is a recording technique. It's kind of cool and weird. You stick microphones in a model of a human head that has models of ears, and the microphones are inside the ears. So it mimics in a lot of ways how our ears hear sound in a space, which is different than how just typical putting a normal microphone in the middle of the room sounds. So is it safe to say, you mentioned these three listeners a couple times, so at some point, not putting any dates or anything on it, we'll be able to hear some REM state music?
Absolutely.
In this format?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I've actually, so backing up a little bit to the whole quadraphonic format thing, for a while I was playing around with a plugin called Quark, which I meant to look it up. I think it stands for Quadraphonic Universal Audio Resource Kit. And I can send you a link to it if you want, if you do show notes. And it's a really cool plugin that allows you to take a quadraphonic multi-channel file and then encode it into a stereo file that is basically, it's the same technology they used in the 70s for quadraphonic records and quadraphonic 8-track tapes.
Okay.
And so, which interesting. So there's like 3 to 5 different flavors of maths that you can do to do that, but it's fundamentally it's close enough to the same maths that they used for Dolby Pro Logic 2, that you could take this Quark encoded file, play it in any old surround sound system that supports Dolby Pro Logic 2, and decode the quadraphonic sound reasonably well. And so, in fact, when I'm working from home, if I'm listening to like some stereo things, I'll feed it through that plugin to just decode a regular stereo file, and there are some things that work really well actually. And so any kind of electronic music or anything that's got like a reverb or any effects that do any phase shifting, they'll send those to the rear speakers just great. Quark, however, and I think it's just the way that quad to stereo fold down works, it's got some limitations in that if your sound is really complex, then the placement gets kind of smeared and it's not as accurate. But for for really minimalist things, it works really well. And so in a couple of years ago, I did a remix for an artist named or called DVDV, and that was like my first attempt is like, you know what, I'm going to encode this one in Quark. And so the if you were to buy that remix album, it's delivered as a stereo file, but you could plug that into like Dolby Pro Logic 2 or use the Quark plugin, or if you're that kind of guy and you've got the set 1970s quad decoder hardware with your tube amplifier, you can stick it through that and you'll reproduce the cool surround sound effects.
I think I know one guy who might be that kind of guy.
Right on.
Not you. I mean, a different guy.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, as long as you know one guy, then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the frustrating thing is quadraphonic has been around since at least the 70s, and that should have been the format that everyone should have. But I guess we things had to become too cheap and transistorized in the 80s, and it was all stereo. And look, I got my portable Walkman, and I can't carry four speakers around.
Even back then, it probably was headphones that kind of limited that, right?
Yeah. And so I did actually release, self-release one kind of EP where I did quadraphonic stuff encoded in Quark. And I actually have got a YouTube video for one of those tracks on my channel that's Quark encoded. And so you can play it back and you'll hear stereo, and you can feed it into either the Quark plugin or Dolby Pro Logic 2, and you'll get the quadraphonic surround sound feed. So
I'm not sure I'm subscribed to you on YouTube. I didn't know about that, so you'll have to if you send me a link to that.
Can do. Yeah,
which I will obviously put in the notes. Yeah.
I rarely make videos, but again, it was just kind of an experiment, trying to figure things out, seeing if it would work, and that's kind of where step in the evolution of, okay, if I can do quad, then that is a way to do it once in surround sound and deliver it in a format that can be played in multiple ways. And that's kind of where the next logical step was, okay, let's do the Dolby Atmos thing, because at least people can do that with their phones and their earphones and have fun.
Right. That will scale up to whatever playback system the listener has available.
And ultimately, that for me, that's the holy grail, because I'm super lazy and I just wanted to give you one format, let you listen to it in whatever system you have. I don't want to be super snobby about it. Listen to it on your phone, in your car, in your Walkman, whatever.
So all these works in progress. Yes. Fantastic. But you have released a work recently, which I don't want to lose track of. So can we talk a little bit about Tremble with Joy?
You betcha. I didn't release it. I was actually...
Sure.
So I mentioned Drecka earlier. He is an industrial ambient artist from Indiana. We met at an experimental music festival in Indianapolis many years ago, and we really enjoy each other's work, so got a mutual admiration society thing going on. And he's actually been a very generous collaborator with me the past few years. He'll send me recordings, I'll send him recordings, and we'll kind of do our own thing to them, and basically we just collaborate remotely. So a couple years ago, he said, "Hey, I've got another collaboration if you're interested in it." One of his big heroes and mine, I mean, for those who've heard of this person. So Cinder, who is widely known for Cindy Talk, he managed to hook up with Cinder to make a collaboration happen. And so Drecka is kind of like the orchestrator and the coordinator of the whole thing. So for several of our collaborations, he has fed me some manipulated recordings that were sent to him by an artist named Mark Trecka, who does some really, really good instrumental stuff. And I think he does some vocal stuff as well. So for this collaboration, Mark Trecka sent Drecka some recordings that he did of some piano work that he did. Drekka did some very interesting tape manipulation things of those, sent them off to me, and then I took them and kind of chopped them up and elaborated on them and built out kind of a larger bed track. And then Drekka sent that on to Cinder, who then just really just laid stuff on top of it and really brought it to life. And so that was the most involved portion I had of that collaboration. And I guess I spoke out of order because prior to that, there was another track where it was a collaboration that Drek and I had already done, and he sent that off to Cinder just kind of like as the initial volley to kind of see, hey, would she be interested? What would she do with it? And what she came back with is the first track of the 2-track EP. So.
Okay, so the second.
Sorry.
The process you described earlier became the second track, or is
Yes.
there more than that?
No, that became the second track. So there are
Okay.
just 2 tracks, and so I spoke about the second one first because that was the one track that I did expressly for this. The first track was one that I had already done, and so I was less involved for this release in that collaboration, but still, it was really exciting. I was completely floored that Drekka asked me to be included in this, and it's so amazing.
Yeah, it's a outstanding record. I've listened to it multiple times. It's called Born Trembling. It's on False Walls. I'll of course link to it. And that's kind of, we can go more on this if there's something burning on your mind, but that's almost a good place to leave it, because we'll just send people out to listen to Born Trembling, maybe. What do you think?
Yes, please. Yeah, check it out.
Outstanding. So you can check out Born Trembling by Tremble with Joy, link in the notes or description. You can find more of Michael's music at remstate.com or remstate.bandcamp.com. That's REMST numeral 8.
Yes.
Remstate. And until next time, this has been Dat Fury Radio.